Welcome to Night Whisper. Night Whisper brings you the darkest tales from the shadows. Join our community. Subscribe, leave a like, and prepare yourself for stories that will haunt your dreams. I should have been curious about the winter procedures from the very beginning. Now, as I reflect on my own circumstances from where I am today, seated in this terminal of Anchorage International Airport, waiting to board a plane which will put me even farther away from the Arctic Circle than it's humanly possible to imagine, I realized that all of the warning signs were there, all of them. But I just didn't want to see them. David Ross, meteorological technician at Station 17, essentially a weather station way up in the Alaskan bush, up until 3 days ago. The advert on this government contracting website was poetic, even aesthetic, in how it was words on a screen before my eyes. Job opportunities, 6 months at a time, deep in the pristine wilderness of northern Alaska, where, no doubt, those hardened enough would find just fine. Access to all facilities, including meals, naturally. Equipment, naturally, taken care of too. A man newly split from an 8-year marriage, sliding headfirst into lawyers, screaming matches, and otherwise, this was nirvana itself. But I needed to vanish for a while. Needed to be in a place where I wouldn't receive phone calls from her lawyer. In a place where I wouldn't be able to pass by our old apartment and remember the knife of agony twisting in my heart. Also in a place where the sole means of connectivity to the rest of the universe will be by satellite transmission and supply drop-offs. And this place was Station 17. The recruiter had been enthusiastic, but vague about the actual conditions. Yes, it got cold, very cold. But the facility was well maintained, he assured me. Yes, it was isolated. But I'd have 3 colleagues for company. Yes, the winter months were dark, but the aurora borealis was spectacular. I'd signed the contract the same day. The first helicopter ride to Station 17 happened on a crisp October morning. The pilot, a grizzled man named Tom, who'd been flying supplies to Arctic research stations for 20 years, barely spoke during the 3-hour flight. We flew north over increasingly desolate terrain. Forest gave way to tundra. Rivers became frozen ribbons of ice. The ocean appeared, steel gray and hostile. Then I saw it. Station 17 sat on a plateau overlooking the Beaufort Sea, a solitary concrete structure against an endless white landscape. From the air it looked impossibly small, insignificant, a human fingerprint on nature's vast canvas. We landed on the helipad, and the cold hit me immediately. Even in October, even during what passed for afternoon up here, the temperature was already well below freezing. The wind cut through my supposedly Arctic-rated jacket like it was tissue paper. Inside, the station was surprisingly warm and comfortable. The main building was squat and heavily insulated, designed to withstand winds that could reach over 100 miles per hour during winter storms. The entrance led into an airlock system with 2 doors, creating a buffer against the cold. Beyond that was the main corridor, with living quarters for 4 people branching off to one side and the operations areas on the other. The living quarters were Spartan but functional. Each person got a small private room with a bed, desk, and storage locker. There was a common area with a television that got satellite feeds, a small library of books and movies, and a galley kitchen that was better equipped than I'd expected. The operations side housed the equipment room, the monitoring station where we'd collect atmospheric and weather data every 6 hours, and storage areas for supplies and tools. Solar panels covered the roof, though Tom mentioned they'd be mostly useless during the dark winter months when we'd rely primarily on diesel generators. Everything was painted in shades of gray and white, institutional, government issue. But after months of living in a cramped studio apartment in Anchorage, listening to my upstairs neighbor's endless domestic arguments, it felt like a palace. I arrived during the shift changeover. The outgoing team was eager to leave, but there was a mandatory 2-day handover period where the old crew trained the new arrivals. I was replacing a technician named Garcia, a thin man in his mid-30s who looked 20 years older than his personnel file photo suggested. His eyes were sunken, his skin pale, and he had a nervous tic where he'd constantly check his watch. The handover should have taken the full 2 days. Garcia rushed through it in 6 hours. He showed me the satellite uplink, demonstrating how to transmit data packets to Central Command in Fairbanks. He walked me through the atmospheric sensors, explaining how to calibrate them and log readings. He demonstrated the data logging protocols, the equipment maintenance schedules, the generator operation procedures. Everything was delivered in a rapid monotone, like he was reading from a manual he had memorized. Then he pulled out a red binder. "Winter protocols," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "You follow these exactly. No exceptions, no questions, no deviations." The binder contained a list of rules, typed in all caps on what looked like paper from the 1980s. Each page had been laminated, but the lamination was cracking at the corners from years of handling. Some pages had notes scribbled in the margins in different handwriting. Amendments, additions, warnings accumulated over decades. Winter Protocol, Alpha. When the ambient temperature drops below -40 degrees Fahrenheit, all personnel must remain indoors between the hours of 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. No exceptions, no exterior work, no equipment checks, no emergency repairs. If equipment fails during this period, it stays failed until morning. Winter Protocol Bravo. If you observe unusual ice formations around the perimeter fence, do not investigate. Do not approach. Do not touch. Do not photograph from close range. Report to Central Command immediately via satellite phone. Maintain visual observation from inside the station only. Winter Protocol. Charlie. If the wind stops completely during a cold snap, seal all exterior doors immediately. Do not question this. Do not delay this. Engage all interior bulkheads and remain in the common area until the wind resumes. Do not separate. Do not go to private quarters. Stay together. Winter Protocol Delta. Trust the thermometer, not how cold you feel. Temperature perception can become unreliable in extreme conditions. If you feel warm when the temperature is below -20, you are experiencing the first stage of hypothermia. Seek medical attention immediately. Winter Protocol. Echo. If another person's breath stops producing visible vapor when yours still does, maintain minimum 15-foot distance. Do not speak to them. Do not touch them. Do not follow them if they leave. Contact Central Command immediately. If they attempt to touch you, retreat to the safe room. Winter Protocol. Foxtrot. If you observe any person or animal that appears to be frozen but is still standing upright, do not approach under any circumstances. Do not investigate. Seal all doors and contact Central Command immediately. Do not attempt rescue. There were 15 protocols in total, each stranger than the last. Some made a vague kind of sense. Protocol Delta was basic hypothermia prevention, but others seemed to come from some paranoid fever dream. Echo. Foxtrot. What kind of safety manual warned you about frozen people who might still be standing? I laughed nervously as I read through them. The sound echoed in the empty equipment room. Some kind of hazing ritual for new guys? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Like snipe hunting or asking for a left-handed screwdriver? Garcia didn't smile. He didn't even blink. Just follow them. Especially Echo. That one's not a joke. That one's never a joke. He pulled out a second, smaller document. This one wasn't laminated, recent. The paper was still crisp white. At the top, in red ink, someone had written Protocol Golf and underlined it 3 times. This one's new, Garcia said. Added last winter. If you're forced to use the safe room, if you can't evacuate and you have to shelter, you defend that room by any means necessary. There are weapons in there now. Shotguns. You use them if you have to. You don't hesitate. You don't ask questions. You just shoot. My mouth had gone dry. Defend against what? Garcia opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. He looked at his watch again. Outside, I heard the helicopter's rotors starting to spin up. "I don't know exactly," he finally said. "Nobody does, but I know what I saw last February, and I know why I'm not coming back." He stood abruptly, shoving the red binder into my hands. "Read them all. Memorize them. The protocols exist because people died. Do you understand? Real people, good people. They died because they didn't follow the protocols." Before I could respond, the helicopter pilot appeared in the doorway. Tom's weathered face was grim. "Weather windows closing," he announced. "Storm front moving in faster than forecasted. We need to go now, or we're stuck here for 3 days." Garcia practically ran for the door. He grabbed his duffel bag, didn't even bother with a final equipment check. As he reached the exit airlock, he looked back at me one last time. In that moment, I saw something in his expression that made my stomach clench with dread. Not just fear, horror. The look of a man who'd seen something that had fundamentally broken his understanding of the world. "Don't break the protocols," he shouted over the increasing rotor noise. "No matter what you see, no matter what you hear, no matter what makes sense, you follow them exactly. You follow them, or you end up like Thompson." "Who's Thompson?" I called back. But Garcia was already climbing into the helicopter, and Tom was right behind him, pulling the door shut. Through the window, I saw Garcia's pale face one more time. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me, back into the station, like he expected something to be standing there. The helicopter lifted off into the gray October sky. Within minutes, it was just a black dot against the clouds, and then it was gone completely. I stood in the empty station, holding the red binder, listening to the wind howl around the building. That's when I heard the first sound that didn't make sense. A creak from somewhere deep in the building. Just old metal expanding and contracting with temperature changes, I told myself. Just the wind, just normal station sounds. But it had sounded almost like footsteps. I shook my head, trying to dispel the paranoia Garcia had infected me with. I was alone in the station for the next 18 hours until the rest of my rotation team arrived. Might as well get settled in, learn the systems, maybe make sense of these insane protocols. I went to my assigned quarters and unpacked my duffel bag. The room was small but clean. A narrow bed with a surprisingly thick mattress, a metal desk bolted to the wall, a storage locker. One small window that looked out over the endless tundra. I put up a few photos I'd brought. My parents, my dog from childhood. Anything from before the marriage, before the dissolution, before I'd needed to flee my own life. Then, I sat down with the red binder and started reading every protocol in detail. Some had handwritten notes in the margins. Different handwriting styles, different inks, spanning what must have been years or even decades. Next to Protocol Bravo, someone had written, "Saw formations in 2011, called Central. They evacuated us same day. Station was offline for 3 months. Don't fuck around with this one." Next to Protocol Charlie, in shaky handwriting, "Wind stopped for 4 hours on February 7th, 2018. We sealed the doors. Something walked around the building for the entire time. Heavy footsteps. On the roof. On the walls. Against the windows. When wind started again, it left. We found scratches on the door. Metal scratched like someone dragged knives across it, but the scratches were made from the inside of the metal, pushing out." Next to Protocol Echo, Mark's breath stopped showing vapor on January 23rd. He said he felt fine. He said we were being paranoid. He went to bed that night and never woke up. Medical examiner said his body temperature was 71 degrees. He'd frozen from the inside out, while still walking, while still talking. He was already dead and didn't know it. Next to Protocol Foxtrot, "If it's standing, it's not frozen. If it's not frozen, it's not what it appears to be." I felt cold reading those notes, and it had nothing to do with the temperature outside. Who was Thompson? What had happened to him? And why did Garcia look so terrified when he mentioned the name? I found my answer in Protocol Omega, the final entry in the binder. Unlike the others, this one wasn't just a rule. It was a case study. Winter Protocol Omega. In the event of total facility compromise, personnel are to evacuate to the designated safe room and await rescue. Under no circumstances should anyone attempt solo evacuation. Central Command will respond with armed extraction team. Facility will be sterilized following extraction. Below that, in the same red ink as Protocol Golf, someone had written, William Thompson, Meteorological Technician, Station 17, January 2019, violated Protocol Alpha. Went outside to repair generator during extreme cold event, -48°F. Last radio contact at 9:15 p.m. Search conducted at first light. Body found 200 yards from station at 6:30 a.m. Medical examination showed flash freezing. Tissue damage consistent with immersion in liquid nitrogen. Time of death estimated at 9:30 p.m., approximately 15 minutes after last contact. Core body temperature at time of discovery, -22°F. Body remained frozen solid for 6 weeks, despite storage in morgue at normal temperature. No explanation found for rapid freezing or sustained frozen state. Under that, in different handwriting. What they don't tell you is that Thompson's radio was still transmitting for 3 hours after his estimated time of death, transmitting his voice, calling for help, begging to be let back inside. But when they found him the next morning, his mouth was frozen shut. He'd been dead for 10 hours. So what was talking on his radio? My hands were shaking as I closed the binder. This couldn't be real. This had to be some elaborate joke, hazing the new guy, make him paranoid, watch him jump at shadows, have a good laugh when the rest of the team arrived. But Garcia's face had been real. That terror had been genuine. And the notes were in too many different handwriting styles, accumulated over too many years to all be part of some elaborate prank. I spent the rest of that day going through the station, checking every room, familiarizing myself with the layout. The monitoring station with its banks of instruments and computer terminals, the equipment room with spare parts and tools, the generator room with the massive diesel engines that powered the facility, the storage areas filled with months of supplies, the galley kitchens stocked with freeze-dried foods and canned goods, the common area with its small library and recreational equipment, and the safe room. It was tucked away at the center of the building, accessible through a heavily reinforced door with manual deadbolts. Inside was a space about 12 feet square, lined with emergency supplies. But what caught my attention were the weapons. 2 shotguns mounted on the wall, along with boxes of ammunition. A fire axe, even a flare gun. Why did a weather station need this kind of armament? I checked the door mechanism. It was designed to seal from the inside, creating what was essentially a panic room. But the door was thick, heavily insulated, built to withstand more than just weather, built to withstand attack. Night fell early that far north in October. By 4:30 p.m., the sun was gone. By 5, it was full dark. I was alone in the station, and every sound seemed amplified. The wind howling around the building, the generators humming in their room, the creaks and groans of metal expanding and contracting. At 6 p.m., I forced myself to conduct the scheduled data collection. Temperature, -17°F. Wind, 23 miles per hour from the northeast. Barometric pressure, steady. I logged everything, transmitted the data packet to Central Command, and waited for their automated confirmation. It came through at 6:15. Everything normal, everything routine. I made myself dinner from the freeze-dried supplies, beef stroganoff that actually tasted decent. Then I tried to relax in the common area, putting on a movie from the library. Some action thriller I'd seen before, but I couldn't focus on it. Every scene change, every dramatic sound effect made me jump. At 10 p.m., I gave up and went to bed. I lay in my narrow bunk, listening to the station sounds around me. The wind had picked up, screaming around the building now. Something was rattling outside. Just a loose piece of metal siding, I told myself. Just the wind. Just the wind. But sleep was a long time coming. The rest of my rotation team arrived the next day. The storm Garcia had mentioned never materialized, and Tom made it back with the helicopter by noon. 3 people climbed out, bundled in cold weather gear, looking around at our isolated home for the next 6 months. Helen Ortiz came first. She was our senior technician, a weathered woman in her mid-50s who'd worked at remote stations across Alaska for the past 20 years. She moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were doing and had no patience for those who didn't. When I shook her hand, her grip was firm, her eyes sharp and assessing. "You must be Ross," she said. "Did Garcia show you the protocols?" "He did." "Good. Did you read them?" "All 15 of them." She studied my face for a moment, then nodded. "Then you know what you signed up for. Most people don't actually believe them until they see it. Don't be most people." Marcus Davies was fresh out of college, 23 years old, with a degree in atmospheric sciences and enough enthusiasm to power a small city. This was his first assignment outside of a university weather station. He talked constantly about his thesis on Arctic climate patterns, about his theories on atmospheric circulation, about everything he was excited to study. It was exhausting, but also oddly reassuring. His optimism felt like a shield against the paranoia Garcia had infected me with. Dr. Sarah Kim rounded out our team. She was a visiting researcher from the University of Alaska, here to study ionospheric phenomena and their relationship to the aurora borealis. Mid-30s, serious, intensely focused on her work. She'd requested assignment to Station 17 specifically because of its location and isolation from radio interference. We spent that first afternoon getting organized. Helen ran the station with quiet efficiency, assigning duties and establishing our rotation schedule. Data collection every 6 hours, maintenance duties on a rotating basis, individual research time, meal prep shared, common area cleanup shared. Everything structured, everything scheduled, everything designed to maintain order and sanity over the long Arctic winter ahead. At dinner that first night, Marcus finally asked the question we'd all been dancing around. "So what's the deal with the protocols?" he said between bites of his experimental curry. I read through them, and some of them are just bizarre. Are they for real, or is it some kind of tradition to mess with new people? Helen set down her fork. They're for real. Every single one of them was written because someone died or nearly died. They're not suggestions. They're survival requirements. "But some of them don't make any sense," Sarah said. Protocol Echo, for instance, about breath vapor. That's not how hypothermia works. If someone's core temperature drops enough that their breath stops condensing, they'd already be unconscious or dead. "That's what everyone thinks," Helen said quietly. "That's what Mark Cordova thought too. He was here in winter of 2018. Experienced mountaineer, former Navy corpsman. He knew cold weather medicine better than anyone I've met." "What happened to him?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Helen's expression grew distant. "Third week of January. Temperature was sitting right at -45. Mark was outside for a routine equipment check. When he came back in, I noticed his breath wasn't producing vapor anymore. Mine was. Everyone else's was, but not his." She paused, her hands clenching around her coffee mug. "I told him something was wrong. He said I was being paranoid, said he felt fine, said Protocol Echo was nonsense, and he was going to prove it. He went about his duties normally for the rest of the day, helped make dinner, played cards with us, went to bed at his normal time." "And?" Marcus prompted. "He never woke up. We found him the next morning. Medical examiner said his core body temperature was 71 degrees. He'd been freezing from the inside out. Somehow his autonomic functions kept going long enough for him to seem normal, to seem alive. But he was already dead. Something about the extreme cold had gotten inside him, and he just kept going anyway, like a machine running on momentum. The room went quiet. Outside, the wind howled. "The protocols exist for a reason," Helen said. "They were written in blood and frozen bodies. You don't have to understand them. You just have to follow them." After that, nobody questioned the protocols again. At least, not out loud. October passed into November. We fell into a comfortable routine. Every 6 hours, someone would collect data from the atmospheric sensors: temperature, wind speed, barometric pressure, humidity, solar radiation, atmospheric composition. We'd log everything, compile it, and transmit it to Central Command in Fairbanks. They'd send back automated confirmations and occasional equipment updates. The temperature dropped steadily. By mid-November, we were seeing regular readings of -25. The sun became a stranger, showing up for just a few hours each day before abandoning us to darkness. Sometimes it would peak above the horizon for 15 or 20 minutes, painting the landscape in shades of orange and pink before sinking back down and leaving us with nothing but twilight and stars. The aurora danced almost every clear night. Sheets of green and purple fire across the sky, sometimes red at the edges, sometimes so bright you could read by them. Sarah spent hours recording them with her instruments, tracking magnetic fluctuations, muttering about solar wind and ionospheric disturbances. Marcus turned out to be a gifted cook, somehow making freeze-dried ingredients taste almost fresh. He experimented constantly, turning our evening meals into culinary adventures. Thai curry one night, jambalaya the next. Even a passable lasagna, though where he found pasta in our supplies I never figured out. Helen ran the station like a ship, and we were her crew. Everything maintained, everything documented, everything by the book. She'd done this before at other stations, she told us. But Station 17 was different. Special protocols here, special caution required. I started to relax. Maybe Garcia had just been stressed. Maybe the protocol notes were exaggerations. Maybe the stories about Thompson and Cordova had gotten distorted over time, growing more dramatic with each retelling. Maybe everything would be fine. Then came the first night, below -40. It was November 28th. I was in the monitoring station taking the 8 p.m. readings. The temperature alarm chimed. I watched the digital display count down. -39, -40, -41, -42. The alarm kept chiming, and the temperature kept dropping. Helen appeared in the doorway so quickly she must have been waiting for this, watching for it. "Seal the exterior doors," she ordered. "Protocol Alpha is in effect." Marcus looked up from where he'd been reading in the common area. "Is that really necessary?" I was going to do a quick check on the auxiliary generator before bed. "It waits until morning." Helen's tone left absolutely no room for argument. "David, help me secure the doors." We went through the station systematically, checking every exterior door and window. Helen engaged heavy deadbolts I hadn't even noticed before. Thick steel bars that slid into reinforced frames with solid metallic thuds. Each door had 3 separate locking mechanisms. Each window had steel shutters that could be pulled down and latched. "This seems excessive for just cold weather," I said, echoing my earlier thought from my first reading of the protocols. Helen didn't respond immediately. She was staring out the window at the perimeter fence, barely visible in the light from our exterior floods. Beyond the fence was nothing but white landscape fading into darkness. "Do you see anything out there?" she finally asked. I peered into the darkness. Snow, wind blowing loose powder across the plateau, the fence posts creating small shadows in the floodlights, nothing else. "No," I said. "Should I?" "Let's hope not." We finished securing the station, every door locked, every window shuttered. Helen did a final check of each entry point, testing the bolts, making sure everything was properly sealed. "Temperature's at -43 now," Sarah called from the monitoring station. "Wind is..." That's odd. Wind is dropping. Helen and I hurried back to the monitoring station. Sarah was right. The wind speed was decreasing rapidly. 20 miles per hour. 15. 10. 5. Then 0. Complete calm. I looked out the window. The loose snow that had been swirling across the ground moments ago had settled. Nothing moved. No wind. No drifting snow. Nothing. The silence was profound. The station had been filled with the constant howl of wind for weeks. Now there was nothing. Just the hum of our generators and the slight creak of the building itself. "Protocol Charlie," Helen said, her voice tight. "Everyone to the common area, now." "This is ridiculous," Sarah said. "We're scientists. We should be observing this phenomenon, not hiding from it." "The protocol exists for a reason." "What reason? What are we supposedly hiding from?" Helen met her eyes. "I don't know exactly, but the last team that ignored protocol, Charlie lost a man. They found him the next morning, frozen solid 200 feet from the station. The wind had been calm for 6 hours. He'd decided to check the equipment shed." The room went quiet. "How did he freeze that fast?" Marcus asked. "Even at -50, it should take hours." "It was -38 that night," Helen said. "And he wasn't just frozen. The medical examiner said his tissues showed cellular damage consistent with flash freezing, like he'd been dropped in liquid nitrogen." We sat in silence, listening to the nothing outside. Minutes passed. Then an hour. I found myself watching the others, noting the rhythm of their breathing. Every exhalation produced a small cloud of vapor. Even with the heat running, the interior temperature had dropped to maybe 50 degrees. Around 2 a.m., the wind started again. Gradually at first, then building to its usual howl. Helen checked the exterior thermometer. -46. "All right," she said. "It's over. Get some sleep." I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about a man freezing solid in minutes, about protocols written in permanent marker and laminated for longevity, about the fear in Garcia's eyes. The next morning, I checked the overnight data logs. The wind had stopped at exactly 11:57 p.m. It had resumed at 2:03 a.m. During those 2 hours and 6 minutes, the temperature had actually risen 3 degrees. That didn't make sense. Wind chills should make it feel colder. Without wind, the ambient temperature should be the perceived temperature. Yet according to our instruments, it had gotten warmer during the calm period. I showed Helen the data. She stared at the numbers for a long moment. "Log it and send it to Central Command," she finally said. "Don't interpret it. Just send the raw data." "But just send it, David." I did as I was told. 30 minutes later, our satellite phone rang. Helen took it in her private quarters. When she emerged, she looked pale. "Central Command wants us to increase monitoring frequency," she announced. "Data collection every 3 hours instead of 6, and they're implementing a new protocol." She pulled out the red binder and a marker. "Protocol Foxtrot. If you observe any person or animal that appears to be frozen but is still standing upright, do not approach. Seal all doors and contact Central Command immediately." "What the hell does that mean?" Sarah demanded. "It means exactly what it says." "There's something you're not telling us," Marcus said quietly. "What's really going on here?" Helen closed the binder. "I've worked 7 winters at Arctic stations. 3 of them have been here at Station 17. Every winter, strange things happen when it gets cold enough. Really cold, below -40. That's why the protocols exist." "Strange like what?" I asked. "Strange like the cold doesn't behave the way it should. Strange like sounds you can't explain. Strange like shadows moving when nothing's there to cast them." She paused. "Strange like people who aren't quite people anymore." "That's insane," Sarah said. "Maybe. But 7 people have died at Arctic research stations in the last decade. All of them during extreme cold events, all of them after ignoring safety protocols. Helen's voice was hard. I don't care if you think I'm crazy. I don't care if you think the protocols are superstitious nonsense. You will follow them, or I will have you evacuated for violating safety procedures. Nobody argued after that. 3 days later, Marcus found the ice formations. He'd been outside conducting routine maintenance on the atmospheric sensors. The temperature was -35, just barely above the protocol alpha threshold. He came back inside with frost covering his eyebrows and beard, his face flushed from cold. "You need to see this," he said. We gathered in the monitoring station. He pulled up photos on his camera, images of the area near the perimeter fence. The ice formations were like nothing I'd ever seen. Crystalline structures rising from the ground, perfectly geometric, almost artificial looking. They caught the light from our floods and scattered it in strange patterns. "How is that possible?" Sarah asked. "Those structures shouldn't form naturally." Helen had gone very still. "Where exactly were these?" "Near the northeast corner of the fence, about 40 feet from the station." "That's inside the perimeter," Helen said quietly. She pulled out the red binder. "Protocol Bravo. Report to Central Command immediately." She made the call while we stared at the photographs. The formations looked almost beautiful, like abstract ice sculptures. But there was something unsettling about their perfection. Nature didn't usually work in such exact angles. Helen's conversation lasted nearly 20 minutes. When she hung up, her hands were shaking. "What did they say?" I asked. "They said to stay inside. No exterior work until further notice. They're reviewing the photos now." She looked at each of us in turn. "And they said, if the formations move closer to the building, we evacuate immediately." "Move?" Marcus said. "Ice formations don't move." "These might." That night, I took the midnight observation shift. The temperature had dropped to -43. A full moon hung in the clear sky, turning the landscape into a monochrome photograph. I could see the ice formations from the monitoring station window, glittering in the moonlight. They were closer. I checked Marcus's photos against what I was seeing. The formations had definitely moved, maybe 10 feet closer to the station. I documented everything with photographs and precise measurements using our laser rangefinder. Then, I noticed something that made my blood freeze colder than the air outside. There was a person standing among the ice formations. I grabbed the binoculars. Through the lenses, I could make out more details. It was definitely a human figure, wearing what looked like Arctic gear similar to ours, standing perfectly still in the -43-degree cold. Their back was to me, but they seemed to be examining the ice structures. I reached for the radio to call Helen. Then, I remembered Protocol Foxtrot. If you observe any person or animal that appears to be frozen but is still standing upright, do not approach. The figure wasn't moving, completely motionless. In this temperature, even standing still, you'd need to shift your weight, stamp your feet, move somehow. This person was statue still. My hand went to the phone instead of the radio. I called Helen's extension. "There's someone outside," I said when she answered. "Near the ice formations. They're just standing there." I heard her breath catch. "Are they moving?" "No, completely still." "Can you see their breath?" I looked through the binoculars again, focusing on where the person's face should be. I couldn't make out details, but I should be able to see vapor from breathing. Nothing. "No," I said. "No breath vapor." "Seal the monitoring station door. I'm calling Central Command." I engaged the heavy deadbolt on the interior door, my hands shaking. Through the window, the figure remained motionless. I couldn't look away. There was something hypnotic about its stillness, something that pulled at my attention. Then it moved. Not like a person moves. It rotated in place, a smooth, continuous motion, like something on a turntable. It kept rotating until it faced the station directly. I couldn't see its face. Where a face should have been, there was only smooth ice, reflecting the moonlight. an approximation of a human form, but not human. Never human. It started walking toward the station, not walking, gliding. Its feet didn't lift from the ground, but it moved forward anyway, cutting across the snow without leaving tracks. I stumbled backward from the window, fumbling for the phone. "Helen, it's moving. It's coming toward the building." "Lock everything. I'm initiating evacuation protocols." The alarm started blaring. Red emergency lights began pulsing. Over the intercom, Helen's voice announced, "All personnel to the safe room. This is not a drill. Repeat, all personnel to the safe room." The safe room was a reinforced interior space, originally designed as a shelter in case of severe weather damage to the main structure. We'd been shown it during orientation, but never actually used it. Now I ran for it, leaving the monitoring station, sprinting down the corridor. Sarah and Marcus were already there when I arrived. Helen came seconds later, carrying the satellite phone and emergency equipment. "What's happening?" Sarah demanded. "Emergency evacuation requested," Helen said, punching codes into the safe room door. "Central Command is scrambling a ski plane. ETA 4 hours. 4 hours? What are we supposed to do for 4 hours? Survive." The safe room door sealed with a heavy clunk. Inside was a space about 12 feet by 12 feet, lined with emergency supplies. Food, water, medical kit, communication equipment, and weapons. I hadn't known about the weapons. 2 shotguns mounted on the wall, along with boxes of ammunition. "Why do we have guns?" Marcus asked, his voice high with fear. Helen was already loading one of the shotguns. "Protocol Golf. If unable to evacuate and shelter is necessary, defend the safe room against intrusion by any means necessary." "Intrusion by what?" Sarah shouted. "What is that thing out there?" "I don't know exactly. Nobody does. It shows up during extreme cold events, some kind of phenomenon, entity, whatever you want to call it." Helen racked a shell into the chamber. "What I do know is that it freezes whatever it touches, instantly, and then it wears their shape." "That's impossible," Sarah said. A sound echoed through the station, metal creaking, then breaking. "That's the exterior door to the monitoring station," Helen said quietly. "It's inside." We listened to the sounds of the thing moving through the station. Heavy footsteps, things being knocked over, the crash of breaking glass. It was searching, methodical, checking each room. The footsteps stopped outside the safe room. Silence. Then knocking. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the reinforced door. "Don't answer," Helen whispered. "Don't make a sound." The knocking came again. Then a voice, Marcus's voice. "Hey guys, why are you locked in there? It's just me. I went outside to check the formations and now you've locked me out. Come on, this isn't funny. It's really cold." I looked at Marcus. The real Marcus was standing next to me, his face white with terror. "That's not me," he whispered. "I know," Helen said. The thing outside kept talking in Marcus's voice. "Guys, I'm serious. I'm freezing out here. Please let me in. Helen? David? Sarah? Please. I'm so cold. Please don't let me freeze. Please." Sarah's hand went to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. It sounded exactly like Marcus. The same inflections, the same slight stutter on S sounds, everything perfect. "Please," the voice begged. "I can't feel my hands anymore. Please. I don't want to die. Please let me in. Please." The real Marcus was crying now too. "Make it stop," he said. "Please make it stop." The begging continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only 15 minutes. Then it stopped. Footsteps moved away from the door. Helen kept the shotgun trained on the door. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. More sounds from the station, things being destroyed, the crash of computer equipment being smashed, the tinkle of broken glass. It was methodical, almost curious, like something exploring a new environment. Then the sound stopped. I checked my watch. We'd been in the safe room for almost 2 hours, 2 more hours until the ski plane arrived. If it could land in this cold, if the pilots were willing to risk it. Helen's radio crackled to life, the station's emergency frequency. Station 17, this is Rescue Flight Alpha 9er. We are 30 minutes out. Confirm safe room secure. Confirm all personnel accounted for. Helen grabbed the radio. Alpha 9er, this is Station 17. All 4 personnel in safe room. Safe room is secure. Advise extreme caution on approach. Hostile entity present in station. A pause. Then, say again. Station 17. Did you say hostile entity? Confirmed. Hostile entity. Unknown nature. Capable of temperature manipulation and mimicry. Advise maximum precaution. Another pause. When the voice came back, it was different. More formal. Station 17. This is Colonel Mills, Rescue Mission Commander. We have been briefed on Station 17 protocols. We are equipped for extraction under hostile conditions. Do not leave safe room until we give all clear. Acknowledge. Acknowledged, Colonel. Do not leave safe room until all clear given. Station 17. We are declaring this a code black extraction. Do you understand? Helen's face went pale. Code black acknowledged. She switched off the radio. Marcus stared at her. What's code black? It means they're coming in armed. It means they've dealt with this before. And it means when we evacuate, they're going to sterilize the station. Sterilize? Sarah asked. Burn it, everything. They'll tell the official record it was a generator malfunction. Fire. Total loss. Helen's voice was flat. This has happened before. We waited in silence. The station had gone completely quiet. No footsteps, no sounds of destruction, nothing. The radio crackled again. Station 17, we are on final approach. Exterior sensors show temperature negative 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds calm, visibility good. Are those ice formations we're seeing around your perimeter? Confirmed. Ice formations present. They were approximately 40 feet from Station 3 hours ago. Current position unknown. Station 17, we're showing ice formations all around your position. Complete circle. They're maybe 20 feet from the building now. Helen and I exchanged glances. The formations were moving, creating a perimeter, surrounding us. Alpha 9er, can you land? Negative on landing at your location. Too much ice. We'll put down at the auxiliary pad, 300 meters northeast. You'll need to make a run for it when we give the signal. 300 meters, almost 1,000 feet, in negative 52-degree weather, past whatever was waiting outside. Understood, Helen said. The next 10 minutes were the longest of my life. We could hear the ski plane circling, its engines a distant drone. Helen distributed the cold weather gear we'd stashed in the safe room. Multiple layers, face masks, insulated gloves, every piece of protection we had. When we go, she said, we don't stop. We don't look back. We run straight for the plane. If anyone falls, keep running. The rescue team will go back for them. Understood? We all nodded. The radio crackled. Station 17, we have armed personnel on the ground. They're establishing a perimeter between your position and the auxiliary pad. When I give the word, you exit through the south emergency exit and run straight north. Do not deviate. Do not stop. Acknowledge. Acknowledged. I could hear gunfire now, short, controlled bursts. The rescue team was engaging something. Station 17, execute now. Go, go, go. Helen threw open the safe room door. We ran through the station, past the destroyed monitoring equipment, past the smashed furniture, through the wrecked galley. The south emergency exit door hung open, bent inward, metal twisted like paper. The cold hit like a physical blow. Even through all my layers, I felt it instantly. My lungs burned with the first breath of negative 52-degree air. Ice formed immediately on my eyelashes. I ran. Through the moonlit landscape, I could see the ice formations. They weren't just structures anymore. They were moving, flowing, reaching toward us like frozen tentacles. And among them, figures. Dozens of figures, all standing perfectly still, all wearing Arctic gear, all with smooth ice where faces should be. The rescue team was ahead, soldiers in white winter camouflage, firing at the figures. When the bullets hit, the figures shattered like glass, but more took their place, rising from the ice formations, growing out of the frozen ground. One of them stepped into my path. I didn't think. Helen had given me one of the shotguns. I raised it and fired. The figure exploded in a shower of ice crystals. I kept running. Behind me, I heard Sarah scream. I didn't look back. Kept my eyes on the ski plane ahead, its propellers still running, soldiers waving us forward. 50 meters, 30 meters, 10 meters. Hands grabbed me, pulled me up into the plane. I collapsed on the floor, gasping. Marcus landed next to me. Then Helen. "Where's Sarah?" I gasped. The rescue team leader, a man with colonel's insignia, shook his head. "Soldier went back for her. Everyone strap in." The plane was already moving, picking up speed across the ice. I looked out the window, back at Station 17. The building was completely surrounded now by ice formations, gleaming in the moonlight. And figures. So many figures. Then I saw the soldier. He was carrying Sarah, running for the plane. We were moving too fast. He wasn't going to make it. He threw Sarah. I don't know how else to describe it. He literally threw her toward the plane. One of the rescue team caught her, dragged her inside. The soldier kept running, but we were airborne now, lifting off. The last thing I saw was him surrounded by ice figures. Then the plane banked hard, and Station 17 disappeared from view. Colonel Mills sat down across from me. "You okay, son?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "That was Protocol Omega," he said quietly. "Total loss scenario. The station's a write-off. What about your man?" The colonel's jaw tightened. "We don't leave people behind. Soon as you're safe, we're going back with a full tactical team." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe the soldier could survive out there. But I'd seen what those things could do. Sarah was unconscious but alive, already being attended to by a medic. Marcus sat huddled in a blanket, staring at nothing. Helen had her eyes closed, but I could see tears tracking down her weathered face. "What were they?" I finally asked the colonel. He was quiet for a long moment. "Officially, unidentified atmospheric phenomenon. Unofficially," he looked me in the eyes. "We don't know. They show up during extreme cold events in remote Arctic locations. They seem to be drawn to heat, to life. They can mimic anything they freeze. They're getting more active, more aggressive. This is the third station we've lost in 2 years." "Lost? By the time you're in the air another 10 minutes, Station 17 will be nothing but ashes. We can't let this spread. Can't let anyone study it because we don't know what would happen if these things got to a populated area." He handed me a tablet. On the screen was a document, a non-disclosure agreement, standard government issue promising severe legal consequences if I ever talked about what happened. "You'll sign this," he said. It wasn't a question. "You'll tell anyone who asks that there was a generator malfunction. Fire. You'll accept the trauma counseling we provide, and you'll never, ever go above the Arctic Circle again." I signed. We all signed. 3 days later, I'm in this airport terminal at Anchorage International, surrounded by normal people living normal lives. A family argues about missed connections. A businessman types furiously on his laptop. A young couple sleeps leaning against each other, waiting for their red-eye flight. They have no idea what's out there, what's waiting in the cold. The news is playing on the terminal televisions. A tragic fire at a remote weather station. Equipment malfunctioned during extreme weather conditions. One casualty, a brave soldier who died attempting a rescue. They're calling him a hero. Showing his photo. A young man with a kind smile who'd been stationed in Alaska for 3 years. They're not mentioning the ice formations. The figures. The thing that wore Helen's voice and begged to be let in through the bulkhead door. The scratches on the metal that came from inside, pushing out. The soldiers surrounded by dozens of frozen mimics as our plane lifted off. The official investigation will conclude it was a combination of equipment failure, extreme weather, and human error. There will be recommendations for improved safety protocols at remote Arctic research stations. More training, better equipment, stricter guidelines. Life will go on. The government will quietly rebuild Station 17 or establish a new monitoring post somewhere else. And new crews will arrive, read the protocols, and wonder if they're real. Some of them will believe. Some of them won't. And some of them will end up like Thompson, frozen solid in the darkness, their radios still transmitting hours after death. But I know the truth. I know what's out there in the extreme cold. I know why the protocols exist. And I know they're not enough. They were never enough. Because before we left, before the tactical team returned to Station 17 with flamethrowers and thermite charges to sterilize the facility, Colonel Mills showed me something on his satellite imagery. Ice formations, appearing at other Arctic research stations across northern Alaska and Canada. 5 separate locations, all experiencing the same phenomenon. Research Station Baker, northwest of Prudhoe Bay. Ice formations first observed 2 weeks ago. Weather Station Gamma on the north slope. Complete communications blackout for 6 hours during their last extreme cold event. Canadian Station Eureka on Ellesmere Island. 2 personnel evacuated for psychological evaluation after reporting seeing figures in the ice. Thule Air Base Weather Annex in Greenland. Unexplained equipment damage during calm periods. Russian Station Tiksai on the Laptov Sea. No contact for 3 days. All below -40 degrees. All showing the same patterns we'd seen at Station 17. The ice formations appearing. The temperature anomalies during calm winds. The figures in the darkness. "It's spreading," Colonel Mills had said, his voice low so only I could hear. "Or maybe it's always been there, and we're only now seeing it. Climate change is making the Arctic warmer in summer, but colder in extreme winter events, more volatile, more unpredictable. And whatever these things are, they're becoming more active." "What are they?" I'd had asked again, knowing he wouldn't have a real answer. "Best theory we have? Some kind of thermodynamic entity? Something that exists at extreme cold temperatures, something that feeds on heat differentials. When it gets cold enough, when the conditions are exactly right, it manifests, takes shape, hunts." He'd paused. "The Pentagon has a task force studying it, classified above top secret. They've been tracking incidents for 30 years, and the incidents are increasing. Now, sitting in this airport bar with my second whiskey, I wonder if anyone else knows. If anyone else is watching the weather reports and feeling that same cold dread I feel. If anyone else understands what it means when the forecast calls for -40 degrees and calm winds. The protocols were supposed to keep us safe, but I don't think they were ever meant to stop it. I think they were just meant to slow it down, to give us time to run, to document what happens, to survive long enough to warn the next crew. And now, as I watch the weather report on the TV above the bar, I wonder how much time we have left. The meteorologist is excited, using words like historic and unprecedented. A polar vortex breaking apart, sending Arctic air masses south. Temperature records expected to fall across the northern United States. -40 degrees possible as far south as Montana, the Dakotas, maybe even Minnesota. Places with cities, places with people, places that don't have protocols, I think about calling someone. The police, the FBI, the news. But what would I say? That ice monsters are coming? That we need to stay inside when the wind stops? That some people might freeze from the inside out and keep walking? I signed a non-disclosure agreement. I accepted their trauma counseling. I took their money and their threats and their promises that this would all be handled quietly. The colonel was clear about what would happen if I talked. National security, government secrets, prison time or worse. But I also think about all those families in Montana, all those people in the Dakotas who'll be checking their thermometers and bundling up and thinking they know what cold is. They don't know. They don't know what happens when it gets cold enough, when the wind stops, when the ice starts to form in geometric patterns that nature doesn't make. My phone buzzes. A text from the government counselor assigned to me. Standard check-in. How are you feeling today? Are you experiencing any distress? Do you need to talk? I don't respond. What would I say? That I'm watching people walk around the airport and wondering if they know how fragile everything is? That I'm watching the weather forecast like it's a countdown to disaster? Sarah is in the hospital. The cold got to her worse than the rest of us. Severe frostbite, tissue damage. But she'll recover. Physically, at least. Helen went home to Texas, said she's never going back north of the 45th parallel. Marcus is in counseling, trying to process everything. And me? I'm waiting for a flight to Phoenix, as far from the cold as I can get. The TV switches to a commercial. Then, back to the news. More weather. The cold front is moving faster than expected. Record lows forecast for tonight across Alaska. -50 degrees in some areas. The protocols were written in blood and frozen bodies. They exist because people died learning what happens when you ignore them. And now, I'm one of the people who knows. One of the survivors who'll carry this knowledge for the rest of my life. I order a third whiskey. Outside the terminal windows, I can see snow starting to fall. Just a light dusting, nothing unusual for December in Alaska. But I can't help thinking about ice formations, about figures in the darkness, about scratches on metal that push out from the inside. My flight board's in 30 minutes. Phoenix, warm desert air, sunshine. Temperatures that never drop below freezing. I've already bought a one-way ticket. I'm never coming back to the cold. And I pray the protocols hold. I pray they're enough. Because if they're not, if the things in the ice continue spreading, continue growing more active, continue moving south with the extreme cold events, then the protocols won't matter anymore. Then, everyone will need to know. Then, everyone will learn what I learned at Station 17. That sometimes, the cold isn't empty. Sometimes, there's something in it. Something that waits. Something that hunts. Something that wears your face and speaks with your voice and begs to be let inside. I finish my whiskey and head for my gate, leaving the news and the weather forecast and the Arctic behind. But I know I'm not really leaving it behind. I'll carry it with me, in every cold snap, in every winter night, in every moment when the wind stops and the world goes silent. I'll remember, and I'll be afraid.